Good evening. I'm Belva Davis, and welcome to This Week in Northern California. Republicans kick off their state spring convention in Burlingame this evening. Earlier, I spoke with State Party Chairman Tom Del Beccaro about what role California might play in this hotly contested presidential primary and efforts to boost party registration in the state. Hello, Mr. Del Beccaro. The theme, and welcome first of all, the theme of your convention this weekend seems to be to enlarge the tent, to bring in more Latinos, more Asian Americans, more younger voters. How do you plan to do that?
Well, this is a showcase for us. I've dedicated my chairmanship for the party to interact with more voters all over the state. So this is just sort of the next step along the way. We've done these town halls all over the state. We're expanding the number we're doing because the key and the victory here is in the discussion. We need to bring more Californians into the discussion, and I want our party to be on the forefront of that.
Well, one of the big things of this year that you're facing that no one ever has, and that is the whole issue of redistricting and well as the top two voter system that we're doing. So how are you preparing for that, or is that part of the agenda for the weekend?
Well, we at the party will do quite like the Democrats recently did. We will be endorsing people, but we're also moving ahead on this issue. We're developing new technologies to interact with more Californians in the elections ahead. But the most important thing that we can do in this regard is interact with voters. I've tried to take the party out of Sacramento and bring them to places like Los Angeles and Riverside, places where Republicans don't ordinarily need to go or don't ordinarily go. And this is just one more example of it with this town hall that we're having with the Asian community and the Latino community. We've got to have these discussions, not only for the sake of our party, but for the sake of California.
Well, some of the issues that some of the presidential candidates stand for are different from those positions of Californians. So how are you going to approach dealing with things like immigration?
Well, first of all, what's really important across the spectrum is that we have a discussion not only with the Latino community, not only with the Asian community or young voters on jobs, education, public safety. We have to have an ongoing relationship with voters as a party on all of these issues. When it comes to immigration, you know, Republicans need to understand that a majority of Latinos support border security when the issue is framed of the humanitarian crisis that's occurring on that border. If that border crisis with regard to the drug running, the number of rapes, the crime that's on that border, if that occurred in some African country or along some other border in Asia, we would be sending aid to that border to help those people. I think what our Republican presidential candidates and all candidates need to understand is that there's common ground here, and I would like to see them emphasize that.
Well, let's talk about the districts that you have to be responsible for here in California and the district lines involved with that. You and the party have had problems with the independent commission that drew lines for the election districts this year. That is still unsettled. You passed a lawsuit, you're looking at a referendum. How do you plan to deal with the lines as drawn and those which the courts say you must observe this year?
Well, the lines are there for this election cycle. So it's going to be important for Republicans to do what we normally do, which is to start register voters, hold events, and contact voters in that area. It's going to be an uphill climb in a lot of ways with this regard. Some of these districts weren't changed because the demographics changed. Some of it was just politics. But it is what it is now, and we need to move forward. And the most important thing that Republicans can do is provide a positive agenda to California voters on issues like the pension crisis, on things like a spending cap, and give alternatives that are clear to what the Democrats are doing in Sacramento. Remember, the Democrats have been in complete charge, and they're about to run out of money up there in March. Voters need an explanation from them as to how they got into trouble, and Republicans need to provide a solution to things like that.
Well, let's talk about the new top two voting system that we're going to vote under. Is that going to make your job harder? And explain, if you would, how you as the chair of the Republican Party plan to approach that.
Well, the new system is the top two, as you mentioned it. You have a large open primary in June, and then the top two go on to November, which hurts third parties and excludes all parties from participating in every election. We're going to have to see how that pans out. It's never been tried in a state this big. But My challenge is to make sure that the community of voters interested in our Republican candidates in June actually hear that message and then put a Republican in the top two. That way voters have a choice in the fall. Sadly, all the third parties are going to be excluded from the elections this fall, which is the reason why I was against it. But you're right, it's a big challenge.
You also will have one of the presidential candidates there with you this weekend, a former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, which then brings into focus the cultural issues that have propelled or motored some of the many debates that the candidates have had. How are those discussions going to be handled here in California, where you have a much more liberal electorate?
Well, my preference is for these candidates to discuss these social issues that you describe in a manner that relates to whether we're respecting people's different viewpoints, especially on issues of religion, whether we're honoring the freedom that our founders established, more so than perhaps some of the Democrat candidates who want to propose or impose certain solutions. But the key for us here in California is we're facing this incredible ongoing budget crisis. And so the Republican Party this year is going to be mostly focused on fiscal solutions. But, you know, Newt Gingrich will be here. He's bringing Herman Cain with him. Michael Reagan will be here. It's going to be pretty exciting. So we'll have to see how they deal with it. But once the primary's over, it's going to be our job to convince Californians that we have better ideas in the fall.
And we thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks. Please invite me back.
Okay.